Today we're going to be talking about rehearsal dinners, and more specifically, picking the right place for your pre-celebration. This is a fun topic because who doesn't love to eat,
right?
And it's exciting, and it also takes it helps you kind of warm up to the weekend, right? And it's not quite highest pressure, but kind of gets you in that mode and starts getting you really excited.
And it kicks off the weekend.
Exactly.
So it's really a fun event. It's usually a little more casual than the wedding. Your closest friends and family there, so it's a fun event.
Yeah, it's a great event. So I think the first thing that we're going to talk about is how to choose a venue. So what do you need to consider when you are looking for that rehearsal dinner venue?
So obviously, first and foremost, you want to think about budget. So
Sure.
if you haven't listened to our budget podcast,
Yep.
Go back and tune in. But then also start thinking about guest size. So you want to start putting together that guest list before you get too far into the planning process. So kind of who are the people you're going to invite, and then, are there any kind of additionals that you're adding onto that? And then after the rehearsal dinner, are you planning to open it up for the whole, a mix and mingle, welcome
Sure.
event kind of thing? So what is that real guest count that you need to be able to accommodate?
And you would probably want to do that at the very beginning. I go ahead and going back to the budget and the guest list conversation or one of our earlier podcasts, but you would want to, as you build out that list of your 100 some odd people on average, you would probably want to start marking people like they would have to be at the rehearsal dinner.
Right. So you kind of have to think, who are those standard kind of must invite people, which is going to be your wedding party, parents, grandparents, and then you guys kind of have to discuss budget and type of event you want. So those are things to think about too. Do you want it to be more casual? Is it going to be in your backyard? Is it going to be at a restaurant? Do you want to have a more traditional wedding venue? Maybe there was a wedding venue you loved but was a little too small for your guest count.
Or didn't fit quite your style.
Yeah. So, I think also trying to decide what is your style for the rehearsal dinner, and knowing it doesn't have to be the exact same style. Most likely it isn't the exact same style as your wedding day.
Sure.
So, maybe you're having a super formal sit-down dinner for the wedding, and then the night before you want to have a really casual kind of barbecue buffet situation.
Yeah.
So, definitely think about what that is for you guys and communicate that. Typically, the groom's parents are the host of this event.
Yep.
So you certainly want to have a conversation with them, since, traditionally that's kind of their event, and the wedding is kind of the bride's parents' event. You want to make sure to incorporate them and get their opinion. If it's not them who's paying, whoever is paying for the event, you definitely want to get their opinion too. Certainly your opinion matters, but you want to make sure that everyone's involved and kind of agrees on the formality and the style and the theme for the night.
Sure, that makes sense. And it is a good way to take a different approach with showing your friends and family, especially your closest friends and family, a more, I guess almost a more intimate side of you as a couple, right?
Right.
I mean, you can do fun things like, having going to your favorite restaurant, right? Or having your restaurant cater or whatever it may be.
Right, or maybe, in Charlotte, breweries are really huge.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to do it at a brewery or have a food truck, or, things that just wouldn't go with your style of wedding, but could be a great way to kind of showcase, another side of your personality for this dinner.
Or if you had a super relaxed wedding, maybe you have a super formal rehearsal dinner.
Right, exactly. You could, since it's a more intimate event, you could have a seated dinner, do a little more formal. Maybe it's at a more traditional kind of venue, and then the next night could be a little more casual. So you can kind of change it up. They're two totally separate events, so they don't have to be related in any way other than the fact that it's about the two of you.
Right. That's awesome. So when I guess what types, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what types of venues work best? Or is there a best?
No, I think really any type of venue can work well for a rehearsal dinner. Restaurants, traditional wedding venues, a lot of people can do it. You can do it at a house or a backyard under a tent or something like that. There's really so many options for the rehearsal dinner. And since it is generally, not always, but generally a smaller event, you have a little more flexibility on the types of venue that you're looking at.
Sure. And actually somewhat related to that, when you're looking at planning your rehearsal dinner and you've hired photographers and planners and videographers, is it safe to assume that they're also going to be there for the rehearsal dinner, or is that a separate thing?
So it's usually a totally separate thing.
Thing's probably not the most eloquent way to say it. That's why
but a lot of times you can hire that team that you've hired for wedding day, as an add-on to cover your rehearsal. So if you're planning to do, a popular trend right now is doing all your toasts at your rehearsal dinner. So if you're planning to do that, then it might make sense to hire your videographer to come and capture that sound, since you won't be having those toasts at the wedding. It's also great to have your photographer there because they can capture those things. If you're having, a really over-the-top rehearsal dinner, it's great to have a planner, a florist, people like that who can kind of help to bring that vision together. So always worth kind of talking to your team and finding out what the options are for the day before. Usually, you're going to get the best package price if you go with the person who you're using the same day as wedding day.
Okay, perfect. And then I think segueing into, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, but really, who do you invite? Who do you really need to consider when you're putting out this invite? Because most people don't want to have essentially 2 weddings, right? Because the cost of that could creep up. Right,
and it can kind of take away from wedding day.
True.
So kind of that standard group it would be wedding party and their significant others or plus ones for the wedding.
So you should invite their plus ones.
You should invite their plus ones.
Okay.
They won't have anything else to do, so you should definitely include them in that dinner. Parents, grandparents, and then anyone else who was involved in the rehearsal. So if you have a flower girl or a ring bearer, you want to invite them and their parents. If you have readers who are at the rehearsal or ushers who are at the rehearsal, those kinds of people you definitely want to include. So that's kind of your standard group. And then from there, you can decide how many more people you want to invite. So do you want to invite, all extended family or all out of town guests? Just make sure that you're being fair to both sides. So if you set the rule, make sure that you apply that rule to both sides of the family. Right. Because you certainly don't want to hurt feelings before the wedding even happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how do you decide that on who to include?
So first and foremost, you're going to want to look at budget because that's going to be a big determinant on that. And then think about style. Do you want to have a big rehearsal dinner, or do you want to have a more intimate rehearsal dinner, where it's just kind of those people who are closest to you, a thank you for all they've done throughout the wedding. Another way is if you want to have that small intimate dinner, or maybe budget doesn't allow a huge dinner, then do your rehearsal dinner and then have a welcome party later. It could be on site at the same place. You guys could all meet up at a bar. That's a great way to kind of get everyone together. It doesn't have to be something where you provide food or even where you foot the bill for the bar. Just something really casual. And that can be a great way to kind of see people, say your hellos, because wedding day goes so quickly and everyone's vying for your attention. So that can be a good way to see everybody and kind of include them without having to kind of have that second wedding like you mentioned.
And I think that's something that I love, right? Because then it doesn't feel as exclusive for the rehearsal dinner, right? It opens it up to everybody, whether they're in the wedding party or not. Everybody's traveled a lot of times and spent money in some form and gifts and things like that. Everybody does want to see you. So I think it's a great way to incorporate all the guests. And actually, they should be buying you drinks, not the other way around. But that's just me.
Exactly.
Another trend that seems to be coming up a lot too, somewhat related to this, is the Sunday brunch. I guess, what are your thoughts on the Sunday brunch? There's a lot of events. There's a lot of things happening. If you could just spend a couple minutes sharing a little bit more about that event as well.
So honestly, your wedding, it does go so quickly that it's great to have these kind of other events happening throughout the weekend. If budget allows and you can, kind of account for that and you're not too overwhelmed with planning. So adding that, a brunch, whether it's a formal brunch where everybody, RSVPs and comes, or it's just something more casual where hey, we're all going to meet, downstairs at the hotel and we'll be down there from 8 to 10 if you want to say goodbye or something like that. It also just gives you a great way to kind of give everyone a little more personal time without feeling like on wedding day you have to talk to every guest for 25 minutes because they traveled in for you, because your wedding will be gone like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's 4 hours and 120-ish people.
Exactly.
It's not very long per person.
Exactly. That math doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. Okay, perfect. And then I guess the final thing to kind of touch on here is what else do you need to consider? So we found the venue, kind of figure out the theme and the guest list. What other things should the couples be thinking about?
So definitely you want to think about the decor. Is it going to be something simple that you guys are going to, DIY? Is it something you're going to bring in a florist? Is there a way to reuse things from the wedding the day before in a different way? Any kind of signage, and then also thinking about kind of just like the run of show. Usually for a rehearsal dinner, it's a lot more low key, but are you going to have toasts? If so, what about mics? Are you going to have a slideshow? That can be a great opportunity for that.
Yeah.
If so, how does that play? What do you need to bring in? So anything like that you want to think about. And then dessert, that can be, something that comes through your venue, or sometimes a lot of time, people will bring in a groom's cake, which is a Southern tradition, but they might bring that in for the rehearsal dinner and serve it that night. So those are the kind of things to think about. Talking to your vendor team for the wedding can kind of help you decide what other items you want to bring in for wedding day.
Sure.
Or rehearsal.
That kind of reminds me of one of your couples a few years ago that you had, where the groom was really into like woodworking, and he had created nameplates for everybody.
Yeah.
And obviously doing that for the entire, every guest, that could be a little overwhelming, but it was a way for him to incorporate one of his interests and do something very, very personal.
Yeah.
That always kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, and doing small things like that maybe you couldn't bite off the whole project for
Right.
150 guests. Plus, this is that more intimate dinner, so people know, everyone usually at this dinner knows the both of you. So it's a really cool way to kind of make it more personal and just a chance for everyone to get together and kind of celebrate what's to come the next day.
Perfect. Well, and as always, in closing, what are some of those key items, those bullet points that our couples can walk away with and think about as they're planning the rehearsal dinner?
So I think first you want to think about the guest list. Who's on that guest list. Talk about budget at the same time. What kind of budget are you looking at? And then style. So what kind of formality? What do you want to incorporate from the wedding? How do you want this to be different from the wedding? And then making sure that you get everyone's kind of opinion on who is contributing to this, so you can set those kind of expectations before you get too far into planning.
Perfect.